I'm sure you see here a theme going on this morning about homecoming, and you are home. Say, I am home. You are. You are home in the community that you have established here at the church. Most importantly, you are home spiritually. That's what we're going to talk about this morning. But November, obviously, we have Thanksgiving coming up in about 2 weeks or so, quickly. And that tends to be a time that we start to really feel some love and gratitude that we kind of tap on throughout the year. But for some reason, during Thanksgiving and Christmas, we really hone in on these feelings, right? And so we have different types of homes that we can go to. And I remember when I was growing up and I was away from home, and the first time that I went back to my parents' home for the holidays, I was so proud. I had my Chevy Chevette. It was orange. Paid $100 for it. It had a rusted out floorboard so you could lift up the carpet and watch the road go by if you wanted to. But I was proud of that car. It got me home. I had made it. I moved to Orlando. I was on my own, living in an apartment. And it was that first time that I got to go back. And it was a big deal. There's 5 kids, so it was kind of a big family thing. And here I am pulling up in my Chevy Chevette. And I had made it. I was so proud. Ultimately, I kind of worked my way up, right? So I eventually got the car of my dreams, which then I loved coming home, which was a Pontiac Grand Prix supercharged turbo with leather seats, forest green, and a sunroof. And now I'd really made it, right? I really came home. But at the time, I wasn't thinking at those, at that age and everything, you don't really think of the spiritual home and the spiritual journey that we're on. And I recently, this past weekend, my 21-year-old daughter was in the area. And she called me because she was going to some electric musical fest carnival or something in Orlando, young kid thing. And she's like, I feel so guilty because I'm so close to you and I'm not coming to see you. And I said, you know what, honey, you're grown now. That's part of life, right? Is to let them go and say, I'm not going to guilt you into coming home. But if you need a ride somewhere, you need to call me, right? 3 o'clock in the morning, call me. I'm right here. So anyway, it ended up that she had a great weekend, and it was just one of those like circle moments, right? Circle moments, because I know she'll be back in about 2 weeks. So I want to read to you a passage this morning about Martha and Mary. So Martha and Mary were friends of Jesus and the disciples, specifically Jesus, though they had a very deep relationship. It's Lazarus, their brother, who Jesus raises from the dead. But throughout his ministry, you see he talks about going back to Bethany more than once. They go back and forth all the time. And so he knew Martha and Mary very well. For him, it was going home. You don't ever hear that he went home to his mother's house, but he went home to his friends. He went home to those that supported him spiritually. He went home to rejuvenate and to just touch base in everything that he was doing. So in the passage, it says that as Jesus and his disciples were on their way, he came to a village where a woman named Martha opened her home to him. She had a sister called Mary, who sat at the Lord's feet listening to what he said. But Martha was distracted by all the preparations that had to be made. She came to him and asked, Lord, don't you care that my sister has left me to do all the work by myself? Tell her to help me. Martha, Martha, the Lord answered, you are worried and upset about many things, but only one thing is needed. Mary has chosen what is better, and it will not be taken away from her. Martha, Martha. There's only a few places in the Bible where the name is used twice. And here he says, Martha, you're distracted. You're worried about all these things on the outside. We can relate to that, could we not? There's a lot of things going on in the world today, a lot of uncertainty. And we become very distracted. And he says, no, Mary has it right. Well, metaphysically, Martha and Mary represent the soul, the two parts of the soul, if you will. That human part that gets caught up into all the preparations and the distractions. And then Mary sitting at his feet, that part that comes home, that just listens. Just listens. And so how do we come home right now with everything that's going on? All these things externally. How do we come home? Back to the basics. Back to the principles. Mary just sat. That's a hard one, to just sit down. You know, I don't know if I've told you this before, but when I was younger, I am, and at that time practicing third-degree black belt. And don't ask me to get my leg above my hip, because that's not going to happen. But I used to go to the classes, and there was one instructor that every single class I went to, now I'm a black belt, I would go into this class, and he would always go back to what the white belts did, like the very beginning. And it would make me so mad. I'm like, I should be breaking boards or something. But he would take it back to the basics. Never forget the foundation and where you came from. And I, for some reason, kept going back. Like when he would teach, I would still go to his classroom knowing I'm going back to the basics. Back to the basics. Because that's where I found the strength. And that's where we find strength, right? Going home. And so we go back to the basics of the principles. 1 and 2, specifically, we say God is everywhere present. And as children of God, we are innately good. But it's really 3. It's going back to 3. And so Charles Fillmore, co-founder of Unity, said, words are also seeds. And when dropped into the invisible spiritual substance, they grow and bring forth after their kind. Words are seeds. And so as we go through these days, we have to go back to 3, which is that our thoughts have creative power to influence events and determine our experiences. Our thoughts determine our experiences. Our thoughts determine our experiences. Myrtle Fillmore would say, heaven and earth listen and respond to the soul. To the soul. Going back to our soul's journey. When all of this time, it's hard to turn off those thoughts that are going through. Would you agree? It's hard not to get caught up into the fear and anxiety. It's hard not to scroll. I've pretty much stopped doing that altogether. I stopped doing that. So we need to find our way back home spiritually. Spiritually speaking, come back to your center through all of the midst of everything that's going on. Come back to your center. And so you were given a handout when you came in. If you don't have one, please raise your hand. We'll get it to you. It says, come home. Come home. Does everybody have one? Now, before we start the handout, I will tell you that I will never be able to say to you exactly what that home is for you. I cannot tell you how to connect to Source. And I will not, because that is individual to you. You know that homeness. You know when you're connected to Spirit. You know. You know. I can tell you and give you practices. I can give you stories, but I cannot give that connection to you. And that connection has never left you. Even when we think sometimes, I don't feel very connected right now, you're still connected. You are. And so sometimes it's like when I get caught up into the hustle and bustle of the world, right? And I get distracted by everything that's going on, and I become the Martha. Why don't you tell them to pay attention to me? I have to find my way back to Mary. And so the first thing, these on the handout, is not steps, it's just ways that we can maybe reconnect. And the first one would be to set your intentions. Clearly define your spiritual intentions through meditation or affirmation. Every day we get up, it's important that we set our intentions. And so we have to think in the moments of all the chaos, what is mine to do? I'll tell you that uh, the day of November 5th, we were at school. As you know, I'm an administrator at a high school. And a radio call came over and said, we need assistance in a teacher's room. We need an EMT. And when we hear the call for EMTs, we typically are thinking students having a seizure. We never think of the adults. We never think of the adults. And what had happened was one of our teachers collapsed. And she coded. And you know who started CPR? A student. One student started CPR. The second student called 911, and the third student ran and got another teacher. And within 2 minutes, the administrators were there. The police officer took over CPR. Another staff member got the AED. And then the students were escorted out. And then EMTs arrived within 2 minutes. And the teacher actually was coded or had no oxygen go into her brain for 30 minutes as she was taken off. All the administrators responded. But then there's a whole other school that has to be run. There's phone calls that could come in. And so what do I do in that situation? Is to set my intention, become centered. Where was I needed? I went up to the front office to be available in case phone calls come in. To also calm down staff members that knew the teacher, that are now the word is getting out. Whenever you see an ambulance, word gets out. What was mine to do? To compassionately love and be available. And set your attention every day. I can report that the teacher survived. She is home and doing very well. And those students will be recognized. Don't forget our kids. Don't ever forget the kids. They do some great stuff. They do some wonky stuff, but they do some great stuff. Set your intentions. And if you're not sure what that is, ask. And so there's an affirmation there. It says, I open my heart to the guidance of God. So let's say that together. I open my heart to the guidance of God. Open your heart every day. Set your intentions. Second, visualize. One of the ways that we can come home spiritually is to visualize light and love to surround you. Whatever it is for you. Maybe some people visualize the beach. And you can do that while you're in the middle of something, right? So take a moment. I'm going to visualize something. So I can calm down. Visualize. So let's say this together. Let me say it first and then we'll say it together, the affirmation. I am a beautiful soul. Together. I am a beautiful soul. And you are. You are. And so's the person sitting next to you. They are your family, your friends, your community, your loved ones. If you don't have family with you or around, the person sitting next to you is your family. The person next to you is your family. Third one, practice grounding. Connect to your inner spirit. Now, grounding can be writing, singing, art, the beach, whatever it is that grounds you to help you to stop and remember you have a home. And to operate out of that spiritual home is the goal. Practice grounding. The affirmation: I am rooted in the foundation of spirit. Together. I am rooted in the foundation of spirit. Yes, because in times of uncertainty or crisis, if you're not ready to be grounded, you can get very easily hooked up into all that is going on. And so come back to center, ground, set your intentions. Create a sacred space in your home or wherever it is that you would like to connect. Now, I can't do that so much in an apartment with 3 other people or 2 other people, a dog and a cat. It's kind of hard to create a sacred space. So mine's in my car typically when I'm alone in the car. I create my space. I listen to my music. Sometimes I turn it off. I become grounded. Or I take a moment, those little brief moments when you're walking outside and you feel the breeze. You just stop for a second, pause. That's your sacred space. And so the affirmation, we say, Spirit is always guiding me. Together. Spirit is always guiding me. And this is a big one. Maintain health boundaries. Ooh, that's hard. Be present to protecting your energy from negative influences. Now, you can play with this or do whatever you feel with this one. But it's important for me to not get hooked up into all the negativity that happens around. And so again, I said I stopped scrolling. You know what? Consider taking a break from Yahoo News or whatever it is where you get your news. Facebook, wherever you get your outside. Now, it's one thing to be aware. Be aware. It's another thing to believe that that's where your spiritual grounding comes from, or to believe that that's your home, because that's not your home. It's our interaction every single day. It's not your spiritual home. So protect yourself. Protect yourself. And if you find yourself getting wrapped up in some of that, it's time to get grounded. Go back to your sacred place. Go back to the basics. Go back to the basics. And the affirmation is, I allow rest, security, and love to wash over me. Together. I allow rest, security, love to wash over me. Biggest one, rest. It's so easy not to rest, right? We're so busy. We go. You know what? Go to sleep. Yesterday I slept in for the first time in months, and it was wonderful. And yes, it was a beautiful day outside, but I enjoyed the sleeping in part. Sleep in. It's okay. The dishes will get done later. It's okay. Matthew 11:28 says, Come to me, all who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. I will give you rest. Come back to your spiritual center. Set your intentions, visualize, ground yourself, create a sacred space, maintain your boundaries. This is a season of gratitude and thanksgiving. And I know that in my past, I've gotten to a point where I do the Thanksgiving on the day of Thanksgiving. And the rest of the time, I'm rushing to Thanksgiving, or I'm finished with Thanksgiving, and now it's time to do the Christmas thing. And I don't actually stop to appreciate. I don't appreciate the fact that I'm home, that I'm with people, and that I'm connected. And so I have to remind myself every day of these things. I have to set my intentions. So this is the season of gratitude and thanksgiving. It's the season of coming home. It's the season of coming home. Coming home to your family, friends, to your church community. but most of all, it's coming home to God. And so it is. Amen.